We'll wait just a second or two here as all of our attendees are coming online, and we want to make sure that we welcome everyone. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that you could join us this evening. We are here. This is our second public meeting that we are having to mark the feasibility studies that have been done. And currently, we are in the stage of showing what the deficiencies are within the district's buildings. So this evening, you're going to hear from Crabtree Rohrbaugh, the district's architectural firm. And before we do hear from them, I would like to share some of the facts with you about what was happening in the past and leading up to this decision. So in 2014, the board determined that they should engage in having a feasibility study to address the aging buildings within the district. The results of that study showed that two buildings at the time being in most need were going to be the high school and the Loyalsock Valley Elementary School. It was determined at that time to complete one of those projects and wait on the other one. The high school project was completed in 2017. However, to ensure that the Loyalsock Valley Elementary School was eligible for state funding, when and if a project were to be determined, the board moved forward with the establishment of Plan Con A. And essentially what that means is that Plan Con A is a place marker on the books of the state to earmark state funds for any project that the school should undertake with the guidelines of the feasibility study at that time. Well, as we see, 6 years have passed, and that Plan Con A place marker is coming to an end. I have received word from the state that we either need to move on a project by July of 2020 or forgo the funding that the state would provide. The study done in 2014 is now also out of date by state standards, and any continuation of the current Plan Con would require a new feasibility study. When those facts were shared with me, I brought it to the attention of the board so a direction could be established. Crabtree Rohrbaugh was established as the architect of record on the Plan Con A documents for the Loyalsock Valley Elementary School at that time, and therefore that is why they will be joining us now as well. The board determined that they wished for this company to begin the process of working through a new feasibility study. And that process is resulting in the next several public meetings that we will be having. A feasibility study is required to look at the district as a whole. It cannot piecemeal it out into individual buildings and just have a feasibility study done on one building. It must look as a whole of the district's buildings. Therefore, what you're going to hear and see throughout these meetings, tonight's meeting, as well as the two next public meetings, will address all of the buildings, not just the Loyalsock Valley Elementary School. Tonight is the first phase that is being presented publicly for the second time. And as we go through this process, what you are going to hear is that this is a repeat of the June 3rd's information, and we are requesting additional public input. During this phase of the study, the architects will share factual information about the statistics of the district, such as current enrollment and potential future enrollment projections, current capacities, and how the buildings are being currently utilized. They will also share factual information about the current building deficiencies, including code deficiencies. It's important for members of the public to understand these deficiencies and ask any questions that they may have about what is being presented. This is only the first phase of communicating to you what the needs of the district are. The next phase will come in July, when options are going to be developed to address these deficiencies and bring such options back into the public realm. We'll be asking the public to weigh in on these options to be considered when investing in the infrastructure of the district. I want to be very clear with you that we want to hear from you. How we move forward with this study and the results of the study are a community decision. As community members, you will have the opportunity to attend any and all public sessions regarding study discussions. We've advertised these meetings in the Web Weekly, on our website, on Facebook, and have sent out a postcard invitation to all residents of our district so they are aware that we are asking for their input. These sessions will also be videotaped and can be found on our YouTube channel. That link, if you look at our website, it is in the upper right-hand corner of our website. It just has a little YouTube logo, and you click on that and you'll be able to find this video and other videos that maybe you couldn't attend but you are interested in watching. I ask that should you have questions sometime after the meeting, that you take the time to watch the video footage at your leisure so that you can get answers to your questions. We're using every public method available to reach out to our residents for their input to ensure that what the board determines is in the best interest of the community and of our students. It is your responsibility to educate yourself on this progress so you know the facts and can help us make informed decisions as we all move through this process together. This evening, again, we will hear a presentation from the architects first. Then we will have public question and answer time. There will be a process that when we get to that point of public questions and answers of the evening that we will use so that every person has an opportunity to be heard. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your time and your attention, knowing that this is the future of our district. So with that, I would like to turn it back over to Scott Cousins from Crabtree Rohrbaugh.
Thank you, Ms. Basin. And Sebastian, looks like I'll need screen sharing ability.
You got it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So as Ms. Basin mentioned, this is the same presentation we gave a week ago, and it's kind of an interim presentation, so to speak. We're still in the midst of the study process, and I'll kind of give you an overview of the kind of linear approach that we take. So moving from left to right, at the beginning, we define our goals, we gather information from the district, we take all the information and analyze it, and then we determine the need. And that's kind of where we're at right now as a holding point. And then moving forward, once we've gathered input from the board and the public, we're going to develop options and determine recommendations. And those will be the future meetings that Ms. Basin referenced. So what we've been kind of doing up to this point, we started this process in January of this year. We've had many meetings with the districts to understand their current educational program. We did this study about 7 years ago, but as you know, as things change over the years, so we want to make sure we have a current understanding of how they currently teach and operate. We determined all the existing building capacities through walkthroughs and surveys, generated a list of educational and functional deficiencies, looked at projected enrollment and what kind of impact that has on the building, on the facilities, and looked at the existing facility conditions and determined what items needed to be upgraded along with the cost to upgrade those items to current standards. So one of the first things we did at the first meeting was to talk about with the administration, what are the goals and objectives for this study? What are you looking to achieve as a result of the facility study? And I'll read through them. Provide equity among elementary grade students. Improve the existing facility infrastructure at Loyola Sauk Valley Elementary School and Lyter Elementary School. Improve the efficiency and consistency of resources and continuity of educational delivery. Provide 21st century educational spaces and experiences at the middle school and elementary schools that reflect the current curriculum. Address safety and security concerns at Loyola Sauk Valley Elementary School. Provide air conditioning at all schools. And develop fiscally responsible solutions that address the costs of capital projects, transportation, staffing, and operations. So we use those as the guidelines as to which we'll eventually develop options and analyze the need. So first we'll look at existing building capacity. So when we walk through each one of your buildings, we get a handle of how each space is being currently used, and we determine based on PDE guidelines, PDE is the Pennsylvania Department of Education guidelines, which spaces get capacity. At the elementary level, any general classroom will get capacity. And the Department of Education standard is 25 students per classroom. So you see there, Loyola Sauk Valley has 13 standard classrooms, so those are your K through 4 classrooms, and an assortment of other spaces. Spaces like art rooms and music rooms and gymnasiums, things like that, do not get capacity at the elementary level because students who leave those classrooms, once they leave the classroom for art, that classroom that they left does not get filled by other students. So we only get provide capacity for standard classrooms. So you can see there at the bottom, the PDE capacity when calculating 25 students per classroom is 325 for that building. Now we apply a utilization rate, and you can see there at the elementary level is 90%. A utilization rate basically means you can't be expected to occupy every single classroom at full capacity across all grade levels. We all know that there's going to be fluctuations between different grade groupings. You're not going to have an even 100 students in any grade level, and you might have need to balance out classes. So for that reason, we say the expected capacity or the functional building capacity is a lower percentage of the PDE building capacity. In this case, it's 293. When you look at the current enrollment of 2019-20, that enrollment was 257. So you can see here, this illustrates that the from a current capacity standpoint, the building is adequate size to meet the needs of the student body. Moving over to Lyter, the similar comparison. You can see at the bottom, a PDE capacity of 575. When you apply the utilization rate of 90%, you get 518 students. Current enrollment is 440. So once again, another building that is adequate as far as existing capacity. Now, when we move into the secondary level, at the middle school and the high school, you'll see that the Department of Education begins to apply capacities to other classrooms beyond just your general classrooms, because students do move in and out of those spaces on a daily basis. You'll see things like all your music and your band and your art, your business labs, things like that get capacity. Even the gymnasium gets capacity as well. Now, in the secondary level, we do apply a lower utilization rate. You can see there at 85%, and that's a PDE standard, but it's very typical for a secondary level that you're not going to have be anywhere near that utilization rate to be an adequately sized building. So you can see there the enrollment is 643, well below that functional building capacity of 802, but you wouldn't be expected to be able to put another 150 students in there. So it's very common that that secondary enrollment is below that functional building capacity. And that's due to a variety of things, like you might have a tech ed class that might have 10 students in it, or you might have other classrooms that aren't scheduled fully, foreign language classrooms, things like that. So there's a variety of factors that lead into that. But looking over at the high school, once again, functional building capacity at the bottom of 924 and the current enrollment of 610. So the bottom line for all your schools from an existing capacity standpoint, there really is no need for additional classroom space, general classroom space. We'll get into some other deficiencies later. So next we want to look at enrollment, and so we know that with your current enrollment that you're okay from a capacity standpoint, but look going forward, what is the projected enrollment, and what does that picture paint for the district? What we do in this is we rely on PDE projections first and foremost. They base their projections on live births and retention rates, and then we look at current historical data and compare that to the PDE projections and see if and make a conclusion. So the first chart you'll see here is taking the PDE projections, which is the line in blue, the lighter blue. You can see there they're showing slightly declining enrollment. And then we'll look at the 3-year and 5-year growth rates. So those are represented in the gray and the orange, and they're very, very similar and almost overlap each other. And when we compare those historical growth rates with the PDE growth rate, we kind of average that out and generate a line of best fit. So you can see there the yellow is that line of best fit. So all 3 projection methods, PDE, the 3-year historical and the 5-year historical, all have declining enrollment, but not significantly declining enrollment, gradual over the next 10 years. And then the other items you see in this chart, the red is the overall capacity of all the space within the district. The blue is that functional capacity, which once you back off the utilization rate. And then the green is taking what we call the planned capacity, which is the forward look at the projections plus 10%. You'll see at the end of this that we never really want to do 2 things. We don't want to look past 5 years because those projections are unreliable. Anything can change. You know, what we're going through now certainly is probably going to have an effect on enrollment one way or the other. But you know, a year or 2 ago, there was no way to project that. So that things like that might impact the district are unforeseeable. So we don't recommend looking past 5 years. And then also things can change beyond enrollment. Special education over the years has changed and become more rigorous and required more space within the building. So although enrollment might not have increased, you might have needed additional space to incorporate your special education program. So we always say you should always look past 10% past any future projections 5 years out. Now, what we know at the elementary schools are the more dire needs. So we looked at what has been the historical projections at each one of those schools. So here you can see looking back 10 years at Loyola Sauk Valley, you can see there it's become a steady decline, kind of flattening out over and slightly increasing over the past couple of years. At Lyter, you can see there's been a peak about 5 years ago, so a steady increase and then a steady decline since then. Kind of the picture that this paints is that when you have a smaller student body enrollment like you do at these 2 elementary schools, it's just very difficult to make any accurate projections. And you can see here just within your 2 schools that you've had some varying degrees of increasing and decreasing enrollment. So when we look at just the K to 4 population and look at that on a chart, you can see there's the blue line, light blue line in the middle. Once again, PDE does have that more of a flat enrollment over the next 10 years. The historical projections, the yellow and the orange and the gray have it once again declining. So that line of best fit is maybe declining. And these are kind of some of the discussions that as we get into the options, we'll have to determine what exactly does this mean as far as when we develop any of the options moving forward as far as number of classrooms and space within a building. But certainly you can see there at the bottom, the enrollment has been declining at a rate of 1.37 to 2.21% annually. And once again, to reiterate, we don't want to look anywhere past 5 years, and we always want to look at any projection adding 10% to that from a planning standpoint. Next, we're going to talk about educational and functional deficiencies. So one of the things that we do is certainly as we walk through the building, as we understand the educational program of the district and talk with the administration and the staff about their buildings, we generate a list of what are the from a facility standpoint, what can you not do educationally that the building does not allow you, whether it be certain classrooms space not needed, or whether it be conference space, or or it might be something functional, not enough storage in the building, things like that. So we generate a list of each of the schools of the educational functional deficiencies. We'll start with Loyola Sauk Valley. So one of the things at both elementary schools is space for STEM lab. So that's a change in the curriculum that was not around the last time that these buildings have been renovated. You do have these spaces at the middle school and high school, so it's trying to get that same curriculum and space for that curriculum at the elementary level. Proper classroom storage, an adequate sized library, a separate gymnasium, picture to the on the top left there is the picture of what we call the multi-purpose room, is used for both the cafeteria and the gymnasium. As you can see, the ceilings are such a configuration that it really can't be functioned as a typical gym, and not to mention the size of it for the student body is undersized. But then from a scheduling standpoint, it gets to be very difficult when you use that same space for multiple purposes and getting everything in the day, scheduled throughout the day for its use. An adequate sized kitchen for the student body it serves, secure vestibule entry, adequate space for the administration and nurse area. There's no waiting area. There's a very small nurse suite that makes it difficult to administer health. Office and small group instruction. I mentioned before changes in special education over the years. There's more and more need for specialized students and to cater to those students, and having small breakout space for those, or itinerant staff that might be traveling through the building to offer support to those students. There's really not the appropriate space for those functions to be taught. Conference room space, that's both for internal meetings as well as parent meetings. Sensory room, that's once again on the special education side, where students who need a break from the highly active sensory experiences they might have in a classroom and might just need a space to calm down and get away from it all. Building storage, separate bus loop and parent drop-off. You can see the site aerial photograph to the bottom right there. So it's kind of everything is combined, and it presents a safety hazard. We always look to separate those functions so you don't have crossing of traffic. And a playground enclosure fence. Moving on to Lyter, you'll see some of the things that are common. This building has been renovated more recently, so there's not as many needs as Loyola Sauk Valley, but once again, the STEM lab, the small group instruction, the conference rooms, the sensory room, and the building storage are all the same. On-site parent drop-off, this is a need that we identified. Whether it's feasible or not, that's something we'll have to look at as we look into any options. And playground enclosure fence. So you can see the picture on the bottom left there. That's an example of a space that the district is basically accommodating for two different small group spaces where they might have one-on-one or one-on-three instruction. But you can see there's a cardboard wall to create those two separate spaces. Moving on to the middle school, as Ms. Basin mentioned, our focus is the elementary schools, but however, we have to look at the district as a whole. So this is one of your newer facilities, so not too many needs here on the deficiency side, but there are some a large group instruction space, a separate choral classroom, 21st century library. You can see the picture of the library to the bottom right. It illustrates a lot of books and shelving and things like that. In today's 21st century educational realm, where everything's digital, we have more maker spaces, things, we're creating spaces that more deal with the workforce and the jobs that students might be exposed to. So creating that space within the library. Once again, another site with poor vehicular circulation. I believe there's 3 different parent drop-off areas. Leads to a lot of crossover with traffic. And outdoor learning space. Once again, as you move into curriculum that deals more with science, technology, and nature, things like that, that having the proper space outdoors to be able to teach those curriculum. At the high school, of course, this was your most recent project. Quantity of student lockers. The student lockers size at the time for that student body is slightly increased since then, and parking, additional parking needed. Moving over to the district administrative offices, additional office space is needed to bring all the district staff in one location, a proper secure vestibule orientation, record storage, a public waiting area with public toilets, and adequate parking. So next, one of the other things we look at is the existing facility conditions. So one of the requirements of the PD study is to state what it takes to bring the building up to current standards. So I want to emphasize on this section that we looked at the deficiencies, the things that the building doesn't have, and the things that it needs. This is more, if you look at all the things that are in place, the building systems, the exterior brick, the finishes, the structure, all the components that exist, what do those components need to upgrade to current standards, whether it be to meet code, whether it be because they're at the end of the useful life, or they're failing, or in various stages of disrepair. So what does it take to bring those up to code in current conditions? So this kind of gives a good overview of the district facilities and when their original date of construction was and their most recent renovation. You can typically expect anywhere from 20 to 30 years out of most of your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems as far as useful life. And you can see there, Lyter is approaching that, and Loyalsock Valley, of course, is far exceeding that. And you'll see that as we go through here and document some of those needs. So circling back around to Loyalsock Valley. So the exterior paving is in various stages of disrepair, and it needs resurfaced and milled and resurfaced, both the hard surface play area along with the parking lots and drives. The exterior and interior doors are failing, and as far as the hardware and their condition, and then just really at the end of the useful life and need replaced. There's some humidity issues that remain specifically along the rear side of the building. There's dehumidifiers throughout the building, and needing to address that from both an HVAC and other condition standpoint. The majority of the finishes are outdated and original to either the last renovation or the original construction and need replaced. You can see that in some of the images below. The classroom casework, once again, I mentioned before, as from a deficiency standpoint, there's not the proper classroom, there's not the proper storage available, but also the storage that is there. You can see there the cabinets are delaminating and need replaced. The food service equipment, you can see there the photo second from the left there. It's more of almost a pseudo warming kitchen. It really is not adequate to meet the needs, but also the equipment that is there is at the end of its useful life. And then there's asbestos floor tile throughout a lot of the facility that should be removed and replaced when you do replace the finishes. Moving over to the mechanical, electrical, plumbing side of things. So the entire HVAC system is really on its last leg and at the end of its useful life. It should be replaced. It doesn't, of course, have air conditioning. It should be provided when replaced. The plumbing and piping systems and the fixtures themselves, the fixtures are at various stages of disrepair, also don't meet ADA requirements. The power and emergency power system, once again, original to the building. The emergency power system is newer. However, it is more of a residential sized backup system that is not adequate for the needs of the facility. LED lighting is, of course, one of today's current standards. Any new building we design automatically has LED lighting, so that is a need. The district has been replacing that as they can at the Valley, so it's really more of a partial need that needs addressed. And then the PA clock and bell systems are all aged and at the end of the useful life, and the fire alarm systems doesn't meet current code. So those really all need wholesale replacements of the systems. Moving over to Lyter. The exterior concrete walks out front, there's some concrete walks that are spalling and should be replaced. Playground equipment is out of date and some of it doesn't meet ADA standards and should be replaced. The exterior windows, you'll see a picture on the right there. They're more of a storm window with the integral blind. So it's a single pane of glass with a storm window and interior. So they're inefficient and aren't up to current standards. So that's why we're saying adding them to the list. There's minor finish replacement throughout. This was a more recent renovated project with respect to Loyalsock Valley. So things like the carpet, there's some ceiling areas in the kitchen and some plaster areas on the walls throughout need addressed, but overall the finishes are in fair condition. There's a section of the building where the original doors and frames, you can see there the second from the left picture, were not replaced in the 90s. These are wood doors and frames that don't meet current code requirements for fire rated corridor, and they're just in various stages of disrepair and the hardware is failing. The door hardware throughout really should be replaced because of its age. And then there's some non-ADA compliant toilet rooms. You can see the photo on the bottom right there. These are the toilet rooms that are located off of the classroom. They don't meet current ADA standards and should be reconfigured. And then the walk-in cooler and freezer is at the end of its life and should be replaced. Looking at the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems at Lyter. So the HVAC system is in fair condition and doesn't need replacement. However, the controls are outdated, and current controls would have the ability to do a lot more than what you're able to do with that building. Now, I mentioned that the HVAC system doesn't need replaced. However, if you were to provide air conditioning in that facility, it's a two-pipe system that you cannot add air conditioning to. So you would need to, in order to add air conditioning, you need to replace the gym and library air handling units, replace the classroom unit ventilators, and as a result of the increased load on the electrical service for air conditioning, you need to replace the electrical service. So you can see there, that HVAC system is in fair condition, but it doesn't have air conditioning, so to do that, you would have to undertake those items. The hot water boilers are in need of replacement. There's some toilet room exhaust fans throughout that are either not functioning or failing and should be replaced. There's some cast iron storm piping that is aging and deteriorating. So we'd recommend where you can to address those storm piping. We're certainly not going to say to tear down every single wall and replace the piping, but certainly where it's visible or where it causes an issue, it should be replaced. Some of the plumbing fixtures are original to the original building, weren't replaced in the 90s. Those fixtures should be replaced. Providing mixing valve on the sinks, that's a code item. So all sinks that don't have mixing valves should be added. Once again, the fire alarm, clock, bell, and intercom system are all outdated and past their useful life. And then here you'll see again the LED light fixtures. That's a partial need. The district has been once again providing some LED light fixtures where they can over the years. And lighting controls is another code requirement that currently doesn't meet. Let me talk a little bit about code requirements. So we always go through any study and look at buildings and say, all right, any building out there is going to have code deficiencies, because over the years the code's going to change and it's going to be updated. Every time there's an update to a code, it doesn't mean that every building in the state has to be upgraded to meet the standards. You're certainly grandfathered in there, but should you undertake a major renovation project, you would be expected to either upgrade all, or if not the majority of the code deficiencies, depending on the scope of the work. Over at the middle school, there's not as many needs here. You'll see a common theme here. A lot of the things that we note were not addressed in the prior renovation, so they're kind of rearing their heads now as we look at them. You have a drainage issue at the soccer field, so the way to rectify that would be installing an underfield drainage. There's a couple exterior storage buildings that are in need of new roofs and repainting of the walls. There's ceramic tile in the locker rooms. You can see there to the right that was not replaced in the last project, and it's failing in various states of disrepair and should be replaced. Along with the same goes to the gymnasium equipment, some of the original gymnasium equipment. The TV studio AV equipment was replaced. However, that system has failed and can no longer be repaired, so a new system needs to be provided there. Refurbish or replace the corridor lockers. So the corridor lockers are showing their signs of age and having issues fixing and repairing them. The domestic hot water heater is in need of replacement. And the locker room shower drains don't meet code. Obviously, if you replace the tile in there, that would be the time to move the shower drains to the perimeter where they're required by code. And then once again, you'll see the LED lighting on here and lighting controls. So this is a good point to talk about, you know, whenever we develop this list of items to bring the buildings to up to current standards, it doesn't mean it's a list of everything that the district should be doing. You can see their lighting controls is current code standards. A lighting control means when you walk, it's like an occupancy sensor. Everybody's probably aware of them. When you walk into a building or a room, the light will go on and off. We're certainly not recommending to go replace all the lighting controls, but we certainly have to document it as a deficiency as far as current construction standards. So at the high school, once again, being your most recent project, this is the smallest list. The concessions, and you'll see some of the things that weren't done with the original project noted on here. So the stadium concessions and locker building is in need of exterior painting. Install railing at the tech ed pathway. You can see there the photo in the middle. There's the students kind of cut the corner there and don't walk around the concrete walkway. So recommend just putting a railing there to prevent that. Replacing the maintenance building roof, which wasn't done. Paint the main gymnasium. That's just the ceiling and roof structure. The walls were painted with the project. Repair the auditorium flooring. So the auditorium has just a painted finish on it and just needs recoating or providing a DCT flooring surface there. And you have a couple of solid surface lavatories in your public toilets that the faucets have failed, so we're replacing those faucets. So cost to upgrade. So all the items that I just went through, we'll go through each facility and look at the, a range of costs for each one of those. I want to make sure it's clear that the original deficiency and needs assessment portion of is not included in here. So if a deficiency of a STEM lab was noted, it's not, we're not showing that cost in this. Any of those needs will be addressed in the options, and those cost estimates for construction options will be developed. Also, the cost to upgrade is kind of more of a snapshot for individual items. It's not to represent what a comprehensive renovation project would entail. And it doesn't include things like soft costs and financing fees and design fees and things like that. So those kind of costs you will see as we develop the options. But this is more meant to give a kind of feel for each individual item should the district choose to undertake one or two items off the list over a summer project or things like that, or certainly also gives you an order of magnitude across your 4 buildings of where the most needs are. So here it's broken out by, you can see the categories on the left there. I'm not sure if Ms. Mason mentioned or not at the beginning, but we accompanying this PowerPoint, there is a currently about 100-page document that goes alongside that we developed that is posted on the district's website as a PDF that goes in a lot more detail of everything that I'm talking about. And specifically, I'll go into more detail for these cost items and show more breakdown of each one of these categories. So for those who want to dive into this a little deeper, feel free to access that document. So you can see here at the Valley, the big needs fall on your HVAC, plumbing, electrical system side of things. You can see there are a lot of costs there. On the building interior, certainly a lot of the finishes that need replaced and things like that. So you can see there a total estimated construction cost at the bottom of $5.4 to $6.2 million. And once again, this isn't meant to be, this is what it's going to cost to meet all the district's needs in a full functioning project here. This is more just a cost to upgrade the current standards of your existing building components. Looking at Lyter. So once again, things to understand here, you might look at that and say, well, wow, if Lyter's has been renovated more recently, why is that cost approaching Loyalsock? There's 2 factors here. One is Lyter is a much larger building than Loyalsock Valley, but also The HVAC system, in order, what the numbers you see there is what it incorporates to provide air conditioning. So even though that system isn't air conditioned to provide air conditioning, you're looking at that almost like full replacement of the HVAC system, and then along with the electrical service upgrade. You can see there the building interior, exterior, and site work are lower numbers. Moving over to the middle school. So you can see the breakdown of some of the items that we noted as deficiencies there. Certainly the underfield drainage at the soccer field would be one of the larger ticket items there. And then some of the electrical items as well, for a total cost range of 1.1 to 1.3 million. Moving over to the high school, more minimal in cost. Dealing with the building exterior, those primarily deal with the things that weren't, your ancillary buildings like your concessions building at the stadium and the maintenance building roof, and then some other minor costs for a total of 182 to 200,000. And then the administrative offices, looking at the building interior, more of a finish standpoint finishes that weren't done in the original project, for 34,000 to 39,000. So this kind of gives you an overall of all 4 of your buildings and all 5 functions. So to kind of summarize and talk about the next steps of, once again, this interim look at the facility study, we generated this kind of spreadsheet that looks at what within the district is a major need, a moderate need, or a minor or no need at all. And of course, to summarize, at the beginning of the presentation, we talked about both the existing building capacity and capacity from a projected enrollment standpoint throughout the district is not a need at all. From an educational and functional deficiency, obviously your buildings that are a little bit older and not up to the 21st century educational environments that your newer schools have a higher need. So major need of Loyal Sauk Valley, moderate of Lyter and CE McCall. And then the existing facility conditions and infrastructure. Obviously, Loyal Sauk Valley is the major need within the district, and a moderate need of Lyter, and no need or minor need at the secondary schools. And then the last category there is documenting the operational efficiencies. So your 2 elementary schools do have some vacant classrooms. So I think it was important for the administration to at least note that from a moderate needs standpoint, there is a little bit of inefficiency happening within the facilities, being that we have the extra capacity. So looking at the next steps, obviously the school board and administration want to make sure we give this interim presentation to the public and garner input from both the school board and the public on the information that we've gathered to date, the analysis and the need. Our next step will be to develop construction options to meet these needs. We have kind of, due to the pandemic and some kind of lost time over the past 2 or 3 months, we have begun those discussions with the administration, but certainly want to gather everyone's input to mold those options. And then in July, we have 2 meetings scheduled. They'll be similar to the 2 meetings that we've just had. There'll be 2 identical meetings to present the options to the school board and public for input, and then make any adjustments to those options and determine the recommended option. And I'll always close by saying, we're the architects. We gather all the information and present it, but the school board will have the tough decisions of deciding which way to go with everyone's input. So with that, that's kind of the conclusion of our presentation. I'll turn it back over to Christina for public comment.
Thanks very much, Scott. We appreciate the presentation again. At this time, we would welcome public comments, and our Sebastian Pfeiffer, who is our technology administrator, will share with you how that works so that you can ask your questions.
Christina, before we go to that, I just want to, Scott, the slide that you had that showed the peak at Lyter 5 years ago, I believe that's a little misleading. If you check with the administration, I believe that's the time that we moved the boundaries in the district to send more students to Lyter, and I believe that's why that peaked out 5 years ago. You might want to check with the administration on that. And
Information.
And the other thing, anybody that's watching tonight or watches any other night, I encourage them to go to the June 3rd video and watch that so they can hear public comment, questions and answers that were done then, as well as tonight. And I just want to say again, reiterate that my belief is that the district cannot afford any more debt, and it would be better for us to do the work at the Valley in stages. We have over $5 million in the capital projects fund. We can do quite a bit with that. It wouldn't get everything done at the Valley, but it would get a lot more important things done at the Valley. That's all I have.
With that, let me preempt the board. This is a public comment, question and answer session. We as the board will certainly have many opportunities to make our points known, make our opinions known. But right now, we want the public to weigh in. We want the public to ask questions and for us to, express our thoughts ahead of time. I think it can have a tendency to dampen a question that might be counter to what one of us might say. So I think we need to let the public speak, ask questions, and then at the end, if the board wishes to, engage in some discussion, we can do it then.
I disagree. I think that the public deserve to hear everything that the board members have to say.
They do, and we should wait till the end to do that so we don't preempt or if somebody hears comments that go against what they want to say themselves or questions they want to ask, they may not be inclined to ask those questions or make those comments because they don't want to get in a fighting match with a board member. That's why we should wait till the end to say what we want to say. The public will still be there and they can hear us, spouting our positions. So I think it's in the interest of the public. We need to let the public speak and ask first.
All right. Having that understanding, Sebastian will share with you how to ask your questions.
Okay, for those of you in the public, if you would like to comment, there is a button on your screen that looks like a hand. Go ahead and click on that, and we will be able to see that you're raising your hand. Once we see hands being raised, we will go down the list alphabetically and allow you to speak. At that time, we will allow you 3 minutes to speak, and we just ask that you please share your full name and your address before commenting. So at this time, if you have anything to say, go ahead and click on that hand. Okay, we have a few, so I'm going to start with the first one here.
Please state your name and where you reside within the district.
Romuald Andraka, 1588 Lake Road in Gamble Township. I have a question with regard to the impact of the pandemic on the increase in homeschooling. Is there any figures on how many homeschoolers we have in the district? And would you anticipate an increase because people have had a chance to homeschool with the pandemic and then maybe want to continue that would impact the enrollment? Any comments on that?
Thank you for your question. I think it's a parent's right to choose where they send their children to school, whether that is within a cyber environment or whether that is within the district. The pandemic certainly has changed education overall. And regardless of whether it is a remote possibility for that child or whether it is a brick and mortar possibility for that child, it does change forever at this point, and the deliveries of education need to change. The long-term impact, I can't attest to, because I don't know what the long-term implications of one pandemic will do. However, if there are numerous pandemics, if there are numerous issues within a community, I certainly could see that happening. I do think that there are many communities, unlike Montoursville, who are more urban, who have a different vibe that parents either are in tune with or parents are afraid of, and they utilize the resources that they have to best suit their children as well. Do I think that the long-term effect, 10 years, 5 years down the road, would impact what we have within the Montoursville district? I would have to say that I don't believe that it's going to have a significant impact, only because of the staff that we have. Our staff is completely into making sure that our environment is one where personal relationships are developed, where students do feel heard, understood, and they are willing to really run through walls to make sure that things can happen for our students. So I think what sets us apart is the fact that we have that ability within our community, and we're very fortunate because not every community has that, but we do. We have the input of churches who help us with different types of kindergarten camp, who provide meals to families, who do many, many things through the district. So I think some of those pieces really do set us apart. And we're very, very pleased to have that type of partnership. So I don't know the long-term impact, but I can say in almost 30 years that I have been in school administration, I do believe this is the first pandemic that I've ever seen, but I don't know for certain how long the impacts would last from being able to keep kids from socializing and wanting to be a part of that live experience that they get within a school district. Thank you for your question.
Okay, so next up we have Kay. Welcome back, Kay.
Thank you, Sebastian. I have two questions actually I'm concerned about, or questioning is, one is, Ms. Basin talked about the retention rate. What is the current retention rate in the elementary schools? And my second one is I understand the need for fencing at the playground level. My concern is, I know out at Loyalsock Valley, the PTO purchased the playground equipment, if not all of it, most of it. Has that been something that has been addressed with Lyter's PTO, that they step up and help provide for the playground equipment?
Kay, are you asking retention rate from grade to grade in your question?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, it would be a very small number that we would have being retained from, say, for example, first to second grade. Less than 5, to my knowledge. I'm trying to think through in my head and count through many of those situations. Some are parent requested, others are not. So it's very, very nominal in how a student would be retained at that level. The fencing at the playground and the playground equipment, yes, I do believe that happened prior to me coming on as a superintendent here, but that did occur where the PTOs were involved in the play equipment. The PTOs raise a lot of money for our students through walkathons and different types of fundraisers. And when we receive so much from them, what we have been receiving is iPads to help within the classrooms and other types of small technologies, but they're big investments for the district. I don't know that we've specifically gone out and asked them to raise funds for the playground equipment quite yet, but
Okay.
it certainly is an option.
All right, because I was wondering, because I know out at the Valley, the PTO did provide funds for the playground equipment, as well as helped support the field trips and stuff that teachers needed in the classroom that the district did not cover?
They definitely do that for us. They are still providing those services for teachers. They're providing field trips. They're providing experiences for our students. So they are very active, and we're very grateful for that activity.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome.
Okay, we have another hand here. Brittany, I'm going to allow you to speak now. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. How much is available in the PlanCon A funding?
So the previous application that was submitted back in 2017 essentially earmarked, as Ms. Basin mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the ability to go after state funds with any project that was grounded in that previous study. So options that were additions and renovations were basically options in that, through Loyal-Sauk Valley were options in that study. The estimate of reimbursement for that project is about $2.3 million. PlanCon is preparing a new formula and a new system. As you know, they've been under moratorium, and so they haven't been accepting any new applications since 2016, but the new system is set to release this summer. The only question is, will the state fund it the first year? But we've had the Department of Education look at both funding scenarios, and the funding scenario under the new system was slightly more, but not significantly more. I believe, don't quote me on this, I think it was like $2.4 million number for reimbursement. But the caveat there is, with the new system, it might not be funded year one, and in that event, you wouldn't be eligible for reimbursement. But the current PlanCon A is estimated at 2.3.
And is that only reimbursable on projects done at Loyal-Sauk Valley?
Correct. So the Department of Education states that it has to be an option that was grounded in the study. So when we did the prior study, we didn't look at any options at Lyter at that time. It was only an option at Loyal-Sauk. And even so, it was only an option to maintain the current grade configuration and do additions and renovations. So it would have to be a project that was either renovations or additions and renovations at Loyal-Sauk Valley for grades K to 5, or excuse me, K to 4, which that would be eligible for.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Brittany, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name and your address in full.
Brittany McLaughlin. We're at Loyal-Sauk Valley. We're in Trout Run.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Okay, William, I see your hand raised, so I'm going to allow you to speak now. Please go ahead and unmute yourself, and remember to give us your full name and your address, please.
Yes, this is Bill Schlachter from Elk Township, board member. And I just want to know what the status is financially from our last building project. Do we still have debt pending for that project? And I believe that with the high school, I've been out of the loop for several years, so I'm kind of jumping in here. If you can give me some information about that.
Sure. When the district completed the project, or as they were completing the project, they took several different types of bond issues and loans out for that project. And I believe our business manager is here. I want to make sure that I don't misspeak, but those are multi-year loans for that project. So Brittany or Brandy, are you here?
Yeah, we have two that we refinanced, actually, one at the end of 2019 and the other one that we refinanced in January. They are wraparound debt, and approximately go out to, I don't have it right here, but it's about 15 or 20 years, and it's wraparound debt, so the payment stays pretty much consistent each year, so we don't have the highs and lows.
Brandy, we go to the debt's done in 2036, and it's around 3.94 million, in that neighborhood is the payment every year till 2036.
And that's all
correct.
debt.
Yes.
So we'll basically piggybacking onto that loan.
No, we would be taking out different types of loans if that's what the community wishes to see happen.
Okay. Well, thank you for that information.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the question.
And I believe with the next step of the process, as we develop our options, we develop cost estimates that go along with that options. And once the district has an idea of order of magnitude for costs of these various projects within the options, then they can go to their financial consultant and determine the best way that they might achieve funding each one of those options.
Okay, next is Jason Hurwitz. Glad you could join us tonight. You're up next.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you guys doing this series of presentations for all of us, so that way we can know what's happening and have some input as the district considers all of these what seem very important updates and figure out the way to do it. With my son about to enter kindergarten, it's an interesting time to start in the district. By the way, Jason Hurwitz, and I live in the borough here. As my son gets ready to start in kindergarten in the fall, my daughter a couple of years behind, obviously my focus right now personally is going to be on the elementary schools, although of course we have no plans to leave anytime. And so the middle and high school are also on, in what we're looking at. But as I'm looking at the elementary school projects, and we would be at Lyter Elementary, but as I'm looking at Loyalsock Valley and at Lyter, it seems like many of the deficiencies that exist, and also the wants, I'm not sure exactly what we called those first couple of slides, but the wants and then the needs, it seems like many of these things, if not addressed, could have or continue to have a negative impact on educational outcomes. Elementary school, elementary students are kids, and having things that take them out of their comfort zone, whether it's being too hot or too cold, being too humid, tripping on things, whatever it might be, are all going to have negative impacts, not to mention that all of those things also negatively impact the teachers and the aides and everybody that's working in those buildings to provide the education to our students. So as I'm looking at this, I'm curious, where on the priorities list would we rate some of these things, like, dealing with the humidity issues at the Valley, adding air conditioning? Where do those fall as priorities within the list of wants and needs?
I'm actually going to defer that to Mr. Schimmel, because it will be a board decision as to where that goes. Sorry, Dave.
And that's why we do this study is, we're trying to remain, I guess, sort of an open-minded and not have any particular projects or directions to go in mind. We want to see first we want to see the state of our facilities, and we're hearing about that. And then in terms of what project we select or don't select, I mean, doing nothing is an option. It may be a bad one, but it's an option. The board as a whole, if we decide we can't go there now, we won't. So we'll continue to work with the administration and to hear their input and to continue to get input from the architects and engineers to decide, okay, what is best for our district for the next, and this is a long-term project. We're not looking at this as a quick fix to anything. You know, we have a long-term view in terms of what, how we want to take the district with our facilities. So, I mean, I wish I could be more specific, but right now we're waiting for the information to come in and trying to digest it and see what it all means.
I appreciate that. And Stephen, if I might ask just one, it's actually not a question, but I love that seeing that for both elementary schools, that the consideration is looking at STEM. I mean, I'm a musician as well, so I always like to add the A for arts, make it STEAM, but the fact that you're considering STEM is really important. I mean, you know, as I look at schools around the state and around the country, they're doing so much, and it's awesome that we're looking at doing that as well to provide those resources for our students here in the community. It can only help both in Montoursville and around the world. So thank you for putting those on the list of wants.
Thank you for your question, Jason.
Thank you.
And I hope you registered for kindergarten already.
I have registered, yes.
Thumbs up.
While we're waiting to see if anybody else raises their hand, I just want to give a little bit of input to Brittany's question, that if PlanCon would be funded, we are definitely on the list to receive that funding. However, that funding would take, we would get it in payments over a 20-year period. And if you watched the last meeting, I questioned, would the payments from PlanCon cover the payments for debt incurred, and the yearly payments from PlanCon would not cover the debt if we was to take out a loan for, say, $6 million or more.
Well, if we borrow $6 million and we're only going to be reimbursed $2.3 million from the state, yes, there's no way there's no way that borrowing would be covered by PlanCon. It doesn't work that way. Would any increase in our mortgage, if you will, our bond payments, would PlanCon possibly cover any increase in the bond, the annual bond payment? And we don't know that. We won't know that till we go to the people that sell these bonds, and they tell us what kind of financing structure, whether it's going to be a wraparound where they weave some debt into year 2, year 5, year 8, whether they tack it all on the end. They're the experts with this, and they'll tell us whether, what it all means, and whether we have to extend our debt 2 more years, 1.5 more years, whether we need a 1/10 of a mil, a 1/4 mil to cover the increase. We don't know any of that until we actually decide on what is the project, how would we finance it. And so that's down the road several months, I believe.
Okay, we have another hand being raised by Kay. Go ahead, Kay.
I understand that you won't know finances until, down the road once you decide. But at that time, when you decide what's going to happen, you'll be able to tell us what the percentages of the taxes are going to go up on each homeowner?
Yes, Kay, we definitely would. We would have an idea of what the project costs are. we would have an idea then, absolutely, as you're moving through the plan-con phases, it becomes more solidified as to what the state actually will contribute to that. And those relationships with the finances will then be solidified more so for the taxpayers in choosing what percentage of an increase should be allotted for that particular piece of the debt that would be coming. So we would be able to share with you presentations publicly about the financing and about what that would mean on the average household as assessments. So we do that right now on an annual basis when we're looking at our budget. We share what it is on an annual assessment. We would continue to do that same process for you.
I was just wondering, because I know money seems to be an issue with everything going down the road, but I don't know how. I really don't know how. And Ron, I'm not against you or anything you say. I just don't understand how you can put a dollar sign on our children's education when they are our future.
Well, I will answer that where I'm not putting a dollar sign on our education. We do have good education in Montoursville. I just want you to remember that the building doesn't create the education. Our staff creates the education, and the people that support that our staff and the education in our district are the people that owns the homes in our communities. And for us to make it a burden on them also brings down the burden to some of our students also. So I'm not putting a dollar figure on our education.
I'm not either, but I'm just saying, you know, some of the projects that they're talking about, like the STEM lab and stuff, to compete with other kids coming into the world, going on to college and stuff, if they don't have the same basic stuff that these other school districts are providing, our kids are going to be at a loss.
Well, I think if you look at the past and the present, you'll see that our students aren't at a loss rate, and we continue to keep up with what education they need in this district.
We still got to go forward. We still got to go forward. I know our kids get a good education in Montoursville. I've got two that got outstanding jobs. I'm just saying, but to keep competing in society, we've got to provide. That's all.
Thank you, Kay.
Okay, we have another hand from Jason. Go ahead, Jason.
Thanks again, and I just have to respond to that as somebody with an education degree. My mom was a career educator. A lot of my friends and family members are in education. To say that the school doesn't provide the education is technically true, but the building does impact the education. When there's not appropriate space for things to happen, like the picture of the single nurse's bed at the Valley, when the educators who are providing that education have to worry about materials being ruined by humidity, or students not being able to concentrate on the lesson because they're dripping in sweat, or are too tired because they're overheated, or whatever it might be. To say that the education is provided not by the building but by the staff and the employees is technically true, but I think it's missing the point, which is that in order for it to be the best education possible, everybody needs the best resources possible. And yes, the educators and the staff in Montoursville will step up because they care about the students and they care about the community, and they will do that. But why should we make it harder for them if we have the option to help them do that job better, to help our students in our community be better? So I just needed to respond to that. I think it's really important that we say these things, that yeah, the building doesn't provide the education, but it certainly impacts it in a tremendous and direct way.
And Jason, I'll agree with you, but it's my belief that there has to be a balance between what we can do and what we want to do. And that's why I'm an advocate for the Valley, and I believe that what we do for the Valley should be done in steps as we can afford it. Like I said, we have over $5 million in the capital reserve fund for capital projects. And we don't need to put the district in more debt at this time. You've heard our board president say that our debt goes out to the year 2036 at present. When we get closer to that date, then more debt can be had. But until then, it is my belief that we need to watch the debt that we create for the district taxpayers.
I want to respond as well, because I think that there are several points that are being made. And some of what I really like is the fact that we have the public input. I think that is so necessary in making sure that the proper decisions are being worked through, are being talked about, positions are being shared. We always want to have that open line of communication. When I came to the district, I had an entry plan that was titled Listen, Learn, Lead. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do here, is to ensure that everyone has a voice. We want to make sure that all of those voices are heard as we're putting these pieces in together. And I think the second point that is, to me, the most pressing is that we are not sure what that future looks like, any of us anymore. And we must be creating students who have every skill and ability available to them, because we are looking at something that outlasts our terms, that outlasts our contracts, that outlasts everything, but it doesn't outlast the student who is the new kindergartner. It doesn't outlast that family who's going to be coming into our district and seeing these facilities. So we really do need to be thinking of today, but also in the future, as Mr. Schimmel said. So thank you very much for sharing all of your points with us. I really do appreciate that very much. Are there other questions that you might have for us?
While we're hopefully waiting for more questions and comments from the public, Scott and Christine, I think I heard you say that we have to do a Plan Con, well, we have to act on our Plan Con A by July 2020, but I think it's 2021, correct, Scott?
Yeah, so the sunset date for the Plan Con is that you have to be under contract with contractors by July of 2021. Okay. So when you work back on that, really, you should probably be making a decision because it'll be design time, and we don't want to be up against the wall with getting bids and signing contracts, but probably in the late summer, early fall is probably a good timeline if you're looking to keep that original Plan Con option open for making a decision to allow enough time, design time.
My apologies there, Dave.
No problem. Scott, a technical question. We had last meeting, there was discussion about putting a cooling system in versus a dehumidification system in at the Valley. And if I understand right, the Valley does not have a passive or active fresh air return system per se. Any fresh air comes in through those unit ventilators. So we would actually have, for a whole building dehumidification system, we would actually have to add above ceiling ductwork and everything to pull air out, dehumidify it, and shove it back in the rooms, wouldn't we?
Correct. You would still, and just due to the age of the system, you'd really want to look at not adding something to, and I think that's what we talked about last time, still replacing the entire system, but just what Mr. Snell, I think, was looking for was just the cost difference of a new system with dehumidification only versus a new system with air conditioning. And that's something that we will be getting numbers for and sharing with the board.
Any final comments from the public? Well, I will say in conclusion then, thank you for spending your time with us this evening. We appreciate it very much. Please do know that we will have 2 new sessions to assess and review options that the architects will be creating for us. Those meetings will be in July. They are on your postcard, so I hope that you kept those and you didn't throw those out. They will also then be advertised again in the Web Weekly. They will be on our website. They will be on our social media pages as well. Thank you again, and God bless. Thanks again for spending your time. Have a good night.
I would also like to encourage everybody again to look at the video from June 3rd, as there were different questions and answered from our community, and to give you all the knowledge that with this project that we can give you.
And comments are always welcome. If you think of anything, feel free to email any of the board members. We really would like your input.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to step in here and you know, a couple of things that kind of struck me tonight is that we have to consider and think about this for a minute. This feasibility study is to not determine nothing other than doing what we can do as a community and where we can save money, where we can have the best education for our students. And at the end of the day, we're going to find out what's going to be fiscally responsible for this community. And when that day comes, we got some tough decisions to make. I don't know where it's going to lie. I don't know where it's going to go. But when that day comes, I mean, first and foremost, it's about the education these kids are going to get and the facilities and where we're going to, you know, get the most bang for our buck. And you know, so it's not about Lyter, it's not about Loyalsock Valley. It's about the district and about what has to be done and where we're going to be able to make the next move that's going to be most beneficial for our students, our community, and our finances. So, you know, it's going to get interesting, I'm sure, but at the end of the day, decisions will have to be made, and hopefully, you know, you have understanding of it and know exactly what you know, is going to be presented, and it's going to make sense, I'm sure, here in the next few months.
Scott, could you give me the number, the current enrollment number for Lyter and the maximum number for that building?
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick.
Did anyone else lose video?
I didn't, but it showed you was leaving the meeting.
I'm still here.
Christina, it looks like you're connected by phone, so you might be having an internet outage or something at home.
We are. We're getting that big storm.
Mr. Snell, I can answer for you what we ended the year with. We ended the year at 443 students.
443.
The functional building capacity, once you apply the 90% utilization rate, was 518.
518. And what was that again? That 400 and
we ended the year at
for the
443. I
current.
think when Scott had the numbers, I think he gathered it was at 440, but we ended the year with 443.
Yeah, we use in our, when we talk about current enrollment, we use October 1 enrollment data that's reported to PDE.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Darren.
I saw that Kay Blair had her hand up, and hope you aren't like me, Kay. You forgot what you were going to ask. I've done that, but if you want to raise your hand, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank everybody for their time and the effort that they put into these meetings and these studies, because I know it's not easy. And like Daniel said, at the end of the day, there's going to be unhappy people and there's going to be happy people.
I'd like to thank all the participants for taking the time to participate in these meetings.
And for the public that are social media types, we'd be delighted if you would share the links to the videos with your friends and get the word out there to folks so they can, you know, hopefully take some time and look, you know, watch the presentation. That'd be a great help to us. All right, with that, I don't see any more hands popping up. I wish they would, but with that, I guess at this time then we'll conclude the session and just thanks so much to the public that's joined in. Really appreciate it, board members and administration. Scott, thank you for your time. So with that, Sebastian, if you would close this meeting now.